What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Over the weekend, Microsoft saw, what else? A ton of backlash. This, though, around one of their most important studios and exactly how they are developing games, and we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Halo, as there are now multiple rumors and reports going around that we could be seeing two big game releases, of course, to coincide with the 25th anniversary for the franchise in 2026. And there was a certain quote going around the internet from Shigeru Miyamoto that certainly caused a lot of frustration online when it comes to the lineage of Nintendo games. But it also turns out there might have been a little bit more to that story, and we'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoyed these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with that DS from Anbernic, the RGDS. This is something that popped up, of course, early on with different rumors. And then we saw some leaked marketing materials, what it looked like, and the idea of it being $100 or less. That was confirmed by Anbernic in a trailer. And now we have gameplay footage, like the system actually playing some games. You can see this. This is over on their official account, and while they mostly show DS games, it caught some people off guard because in the beginning, they do show some 3DS gameplay as well. Now it's Rune Factory 4, and I think the idea here is this is primarily, I mean, you can even just look at the screen size, the aspect ratio they're going for. This is primarily a DS emulation device, but I'm sure there are certain lighter 3DS games we can say, or easier to run 3DS games that would also function here. You just might have a kind of a squished aspect ratio, or you'd have to put some like black bars up, widescreen mode sort of on that top screen to make it all work. But I was really just looking at this as a DS specific device. So having 3DS at least of some kind that we can play around with and test and see what would work well there, it's a nice bonus. We're still waiting for the official pricing, expecting $100 or less, maybe $99, and a release date for this one. So I'll keep an eye out for that and keep you guys posted. Also, it looks like we're getting closer to a new Dragon Ball game announcement. This we can see over on their official account, where they are pointing to a new Dragon Ball game project being unveiled this January. So just a few months out. Naturally, speculation started running wild online, and while some were throwing out the idea of mobile games and stuff, I mean, look, there's no stranger when we see like Dragon Ball when it comes to mobile games, gacha games, stuff like that. But then we saw things like Xenoverse 3 getting thrown around, a new Dragon Ball Fighter, something maybe after Dragon Ball Kakarot. There are a lot of different avenues they can take this thing, and I guess the one that makes the most sense because it also makes a ton of money for them would be Xenoverse 3, although I guess that is kind of similar to what they've done with Sparking Zero to a degree, so I would like to see a follow-up maybe to Dragon Ball Kakarot, but that's just me. Either way, we'll find out here in a few months as we start up 2026 in January, expecting a new game announcement. Oh, and it looks like Sony moving more and more of their game properties to the big screen. It's continuing. This we can see. This is over on the Game Post. They say Sony confirms its live-action Horizon Zero Dawn movie has a finished script and plans to start filming in 2026, aiming for a 2027 release, according to a new court filing that they were able to acquire here. And we already heard about the Horizon Zero Dawn getting a movie adaptation. And you know what? The game itself is quite popular. We've seen it, the numbers that get out there. I think the whole franchise is more than 30 million units have sold. And when you look at that world, it would look really cool in a movie, like on a big screen, just sort of the technology mixed with like the dinosaurs and sort of the equipment and weapons and everything they have set up in the game. I do think it would look really, really cool if done right. Now, I don't really know much else beyond the fact that they are doing it and that there is filming's going to start in 2026. So I guess we'll have to keep an eye out for any casting details or any information that gets out there around the movie itself. But for now, I guess we'll look to next year for the filming to start, and sure some leaks getting out there then, and then I guess 2027 for the movie to come out. But we've seen how deadlines can go, and it wouldn't shock me if maybe it got pushed back a little later. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the backlash that absolutely crushed Microsoft over the weekend. And this has been a common occurrence really for a while, but definitely it ramped up when Microsoft decided to start raising prices of everything. Consoles, their subscription service with Game Pass, especially Game Pass Ultimate at $30 per month. Yeah, that didn't help the situation. But now we're starting to get some reports out of Halo Studios, especially as we head into the Halo Championships that's happening later on this week. And we're expecting some reveals. We'll get to that here soon. But one thing has come up, and it is a touchy topic right now, not only just in like the world itself, but definitely in games. That has to do with AI development. Now, this is part of a report. The second part, again, we'll get to here soon. This is part of a report from Rebs Gaming, who does have, from what I've seen in the past, good sourcing that's close to the Halo franchise at Microsoft. And this we can see is transcribed from his video. And this is coming from the Game Post saying, generative AI is apparently woven into every aspect of development, such as enemy AI and terrain generation. I think what they're mostly doing is that and then touching up the work with human hands. Also, developers are expected to meet similar or quicker deadlines, and the only means to do so is through the use of AI, whether that's mundane tasks like scheduling things or writing emails, all the way up to the actual game development. Again, this really, some of the statements that were then put on social media, like X, for example, garnered a ton of reactions online. And it was Microsoft, a ton of backlash, getting crushed online. Then we did see Rebs Gaming respond to a lot of this over on his X account, saying, many people are misinterpreting what I reported as if it directly confirms AI is being used in all the wrong ways and Halo is doomed. I did not report that. I have begun reaching out to sources to figure out specifics about how Halo Studios is using generative AI. Also, using AI in game development isn't new, but using it in negative ways is becoming an industry-wide issue. I'll talk about this in the next video, so keep an eye on that. And then Jez Corden did come in and say Halo is not using generative AI in its game dev or art assets, etc. for its next game. Microsoft has no mandate, I say, on studios to use generative AI for games. I'm sure it's being used for emails, stuff like that, but they're not making a Gen AI game here. So when I was hearing about this and I saw some of the examples they were drawing, which is like, oh, terrain can be procedurally generated, maybe by different algorithms they have, and that it's close. I get it, to the idea of using generative AI, but it's not quite. It's something that's been used for a while, procedurally generated assets or, again, terrain models, stuff like that. And there are many games that just use that dynamically in a game to draw out parts of a world or a dungeon, other parts. So that has been used in development for a while. That's sort of what it was being floated here as, hey, they're using procedural generation and different algorithms to create parts of these worlds, and they go up and make it look different enough and unique and add on to it. It's just kind of a way to save time. The thing with generative AI comes down to you can actually type into a prompt, make this world with oceans and clouds and thunderstorms and stuff, and then it immediately makes all of it for you, and that's it. There are websites and programs like Sora 2 is a thing that's been going around where you can just describe something to it and it will make it, and it looks really, really good. Like very, very believable. That, I think, is what people were picturing here, but it doesn't seem to necessarily be the case. That said, yeah, I'm sure they are using AI for emails and mundane tasks and database stuff, and Microsoft is no secret. They are not quiet about the idea of integrating AI quite a bit into a lot of their corporate day-to-day activities. They've even recently pushed an update for Windows 11 that tries to get you to use Copilot and integrate that even more into Windows to where you can talk to your computer and it'll just start doing stuff on screen for you. So that part does make it a little more believable that we will eventually get there to where, yeah, Microsoft almost mandating the use of AI. Not there yet from what we're seeing, as not with Halo Studios or anything else, but it wouldn't shock me if we are on our way there, just the way the world is currently moving. And game development, I'm sure, is not going to be excluded from that whole movement, especially when the bigwigs and the executives at the top start seeing how much money they can save from it. Next up, let's stick with the story around Halo Studios, as Rebs Gaming did have something else to go over, and that includes actual games that should be announced here, we think, soon. Now, we do have the Halo World Championships this week, but apparently there are 2 Halo games that are slated to come out in 2026, so I would assume one or maybe both could be announced later on this week, but we can see this. This is transcribed over on Engadget from Rebs Gaming, saying, according to YouTuber Rebs Gaming, a source claimed that Halo Studios, previously known as 343 Industries, is working on a multiplayer Halo title that could borrow Fortnite's model of constantly pushing out content updates. The report also noted that there aren't any mentions of Fortnite's Battle Royale style for the upcoming game. When Fortnite got thrown in there for Halo multiplayer, people went, oh no, it's over. They're making a Fortnite-like Halo multiplayer game. And look, Fortnite, incredibly successful, also kind of lightning in a bottle, right? And that's been the ongoing issue and concern with all these studios that try to chase that dream. It's just, it's such a one-off experience almost that it's very, very difficult to replicate with that level of success. And if it doesn't get anywhere near Fortnite levels, we've seen how many live service games get shut down and then the studios move on from that. So here, I do think there is some sort of live service multiplayer only Halo game in development. I've talked about it for a little while now, and I don't think it's gonna be the traditional battle royale style. I think it's different. Like, there's a twist on it and stuff. So I'm interested to see what that is. But the thing that gets me about this is Halo Infinite, a free-to-play multiplayer game, is kind of already their live service game that has battle passes you can switch between freely on the fly. Between each match, you can just change your battle pass thing to whatever you want. Even if it came out, a year or two ago, there's no time limit or anything on it. So that's actually really good that there's not necessarily FOMO that's involved with that. So I am more interested to see what exactly they have planned for this ongoing multiplayer style game, because while I like the campaign for Halo, I also understand most people out there play Halo for just the multiplayer. But with campaign in mind, that Halo remake has continued to come up over and over and over again with these reports getting out there. So we're looking towards the end of this week for either, I guess, this multiplayer game or the Halo 1 campaign remake getting announced. Maybe both. One is like the single player sort of experience, and this other live service multiplayer thing is going to fill in the role of playing online with your friends with an ever-evolving universe that kind of the pitch of Halo Infinite, but here we are. We'll see what we have towards the end of this week, though, at the Halo World Championships. Next up, let's talk about that M64 system. That's ModRetro and their FPGA-enabled N64. And this was announced like a couple months ago or so, and it seemed like it was going to go up against that Analog 3D, which has been delayed now multiple times, and I guess it's still coming out this year. Most likely, I assume they're shipping it in December. Otherwise, they'll have another fun message to put out, I'm sure, on their social media account about it being a 2026 release now. But here's the interesting thing about the M64. There is currently footage of it working, and that's more than we can say at this time than the Analog 3D. Now, I first saw this over on, get this, RGT Stash, where he talked about how he got footage from John Riggs, who is currently over at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. And like you can see here, this is footage of the device that they have there. And interestingly enough, they do have the top off, so you can just see the board, which pretty transparent. I mean, literally it's transparent. It's in a transparent case, but like, that's interesting that they decided, we're just going to be very open about what we're developing here. You can see everything, including the chip there at the top, a couple of Wi-Fi modules, the whole thing. And it looks like they have Mario Kart 64 plugged in and playing. And along with that, again, you can see on RGT Stash here, just ignore the 40-year-old in the corner there with the wrestling figures on the wall, but there is footage of the thing playing Mario Kart 64. There were some concerns around the saturation on the TV. I still think I need to see direct capture footage of this in action. Like when you have cameras recording stuff off screen, and at times when it's out of focus, like in this interview here, where we have 8-bit joystick talking with Palmer Luckey about the whole project, it's kind of hard sometimes. Is the camera doing HDR? Like my iPhone would just start recording HDR on its own without me thinking to turn that off. So I would want to just see actual footage of it being captured by a high quality capture card before I could make any final determinations on it. But here we are now with it actually being out there and showing footage. Now in this interview, 8-bit joystick, I did notice that with the M64 is mentioned, not only do they want to have an HDMI out connection, they also want to have more traditional outputs that will work for, say, a CRT, as of course there are a lot of retro enthusiasts that want to use their nice CRT that they have set up in their room and not necessarily plug into like a big flat screen TV. So I thought that's kind of interesting to have multiple outputs on the back depending on your setup. But still really cool stuff. I'll keep an eye out for this M64 as we're still waiting for an official release date on it, but we are expecting a pretty decent price right around the $200 mark, and hopefully they can have this thing out before the end of next year, but it seems like right now they're out in front of the Analog 3D as they make their way to market. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Shigeru Miyamoto, as there was a quote that was floating around online yesterday that certainly caused a lot of arguing and frustration, because it almost seems like he's kind of brushing off the idea of Nintendo's history and legacy when it comes to their systems in favor of, well, movies. Now we know, of course, he's working on a lot of stuff now outside of games, the theme parks, and with the Mario movie, the next Mario movie coming up, the Zelda movie. There's a lot of stuff he's doing that's not game related technically, but there was this we can see, and this is over on Kyoto News. And I want you to keep an eye on this one, okay? So it is dated October 19th, 2025. They say Shigeru Miyamoto, executive fellow at Nintendo and the creator of Super Mario, views such adaptations as a getaway for fans to reconnect with the company's games as part of a broader strategy to grow Nintendo into an enduring global brand. Quote, games eventually stop running when newer versions come out, but films remain forever. Now, that one sentence was enough because you look at it and go, oh, wow, they really don't care about their older games or making them accessible to a bunch of people or anything like that. And they killed off the virtual console. This is all stuff that was being said. And then people started looking at a bit more to this quote and exactly where it was pulled from, because this one sentence apparently out of an entire interview. Well, let's take a look. This we can see. This is over on Blue Sky from Arasu, who did point out where it's from. And then from here, I was actually able to find the exact website and everything. And we'll just go from the top here on that bottom paragraph saying, ultimately, what people, oh, this is, by the way, about the Nintendo, their museum. All right, so keep that in mind as well with context. Ultimately, what people remember are the IPs. Games become obsolete when new versions come out, but that's incredibly sad. We started video production partly because of that sadness, seeing our creations become playable only on Virtual Console. Even making them playable in a museum has its limits, but video content can endure forever. I envision more and more of these things accumulating, making Nintendo itself a huge brand. I always say our theme is creating reasons for people to choose Nintendo. I dream of a world where when a child enters first grade, the conversation isn't what game should we buy, but rather when you start first grade, we'll get you a Nintendo. Now, again, I looked into where this all came from, and I found it over on NDW, and this is from an interview out of October 2nd, 2024, once again, about the museum. And it's weird because I don't know why he'd be doing any kind of interviews now about the museum. Like, it's open, people are visiting it, that's kind of all done. The big PR tour is over. And if you really look at this, Miyamoto does kind of reflect on the idea that, wow, eventually, to play on traditional hardware is going to be really difficult. Like, it's harder, really, if you think about it, every day. As we go along and these systems and these games get older and older and older, eventually you wonder, will we get to a point where the NES is so hard to find because so many of them just stop working that it is like a complete commodity? Like, I don't say like gold, but if you know somebody who has a Nintendo, you're like, whoa, I gotta check that thing out. Is that where we'll be in 20 or 30 years? Maybe. And also showing, kind of reflecting on the idea of, oh wow, it's just through Virtual Console? You can't play that traditional way. I mean, again, Miyamoto, traditionalist, the idea of the museum being a way to, I guess, let people play these games the way they were quote unquote intended, but on real hardware. The idea of film being, it's not reliant on a generation of systems. You feel like, especially with how a lot of them are just digital now, they could stand the test of time for, I mean, I don't want to say forever, but much longer than an NES from 1986 or something. So yeah, when you get the full context of that quote, it does make a lot more sense. It isn't necessarily just Miyamoto brushing off the legacy of Nintendo as a whole, looking towards movies instead. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, do you still have N64 cartridges in your collection? Wow, we're almost half and half here. 53% though say yes, 47% say no. And here's the thing, that the M64 or the Analog 3D, it's kind of reliant on you having cartridges to play. And I know we've seen some other FPGA-based systems that come out and can all of a sudden read ROM files off an SD card. That's really not what they're advertised for. The idea is this is for the enthusiast who has Nintendo 64 cartridges. You pop them in and you can play it with your N64 controller that you've kept in good condition for decades now. So I do wonder, when it comes down to it, how many people do look on their shelf and go, oh yeah, I do have a handful of N64 games, because I also think many people go, that'd be really fun to have that, and I don't say revisit, but check out the library for the first time. Let's go see how much that EverDrive costs. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Gary Oak, who says, waiting on your review of Pokemon ZA, John. Yeah, people seem real happy with that game online, man. There's no fighting at all over that. Social media has been like on fire because of Pokemon ZA, which it is funny to see that somewhat, because like it's on fire every time a new Pokemon game comes out. I want to say over the last, it might have been 10 or 15 years, I was looking up forum posts from way back in the day. I'm talking about early 2000s somewhat. And people were still arguing about Pokemon then. So it has been an ongoing thing. It's just the way I look at the Pokemon conversation most times now is kind of a waste of time to a degree. Game Freak, as we know, not great when it comes to 3D game development. I think we all look around and understand that. And they've been kind of stuck in the past with sort of the graphic side and the presentation side for a while now, decade plus. Especially since they were moving to the Switch. Now the Switch 2, much more capable than what they've done with the 3DS. That was the strongest handheld they worked on then. But while they are kind of lagging behind, the people who grew up with it, myself included with Pokemon, look back on those incredible moments where Red and Blue or Yellow came out, and it was like, how is this possible in the Game Boy? That feeling has been left in the past. We don't see that anymore with these newer Pokemon games, and to a degree, it's like the Pokemon games haven't grown up with the people who played it back then and have grown up, right? So I think there are many out there who would like to see that happen. But there's a lot of people who just hate Pokemon, and that's just kind of it. Every time they come out, they're annoyed at it, and then somehow ZA is the worst Pokemon game, even though we all remember what happened with Scarlet and Violet, which tells me that when Gen 10 comes out, that'll become the worst Pokemon game. It's like the latest one is the worst Pokemon game ever made. A lot of criticisms around Pokemon, but the problem is it's just everything is just so like so much hyperbole around it. There's no nuance, and the conversation just becomes kind of boring really, really quick. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed last week's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you want to check out a way to build a very cheap emulation console. I took a look at that over the weekend, and I'll leave it in a video right below it. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.